Hello YouTube, Sidekick here in my trusty community A-4E Skyhawk. I'm doing another little video about planning a pop-up attack. I already did one video for how to plan a pop-up attack in a modern jet, one that basically has waypoints you can follow on the HUD. But you don't have that in the A4, you just have the nav computer, which really restricts you to one waypoint at a time. Yes, I know you can program the second one, but if you want to actually drop right into the mission and not have to enter the waypoint, let's just say you have one, you can do it with just one. Just need to think through a little bit the process that we're going to use. So let's hop over to the Mission Editor and take a look at how we're going to do that. Okay, here we are in the Mission Editor. The plan for today is to take off in an A4 from Kobuleti and perform a pop-up attack on the target on the range. We want to roll in on the target at 10,000 feet and dive at 35 degrees, and we also want the pull-up to start, well, basically at treetop level, but we want to pull up at 35 degrees to get to 10,000 feet. So I showed a method last time using the Harrier of how to do that, and first of all, I made a little table in Excel to figure out how far away things needed to be to make that work. And it turns out that you need to be about 4,400 meters. The roll-in point needs to be 4,400 meters from the target, and because it's symmetric, the pull-up point needs to be 4,400 meters from the roll-in point. So figuring out where we want to put those on the map, we can do that with a couple of zones. So first of all, I define a zone here. It says 14,436 feet. You'll have to take my word for it that that's 4,400 meters. So we put one zone over top of the target. This basically becomes our roll-in zone, because if we roll in anywhere on the circumference of this circle, then we will end up diving at 35 degrees to reach the target. And we define another zone that we call the pull-up zone. If we put the center of that zone on the circumference of the first one, then any point on the circumference of this circle is a valid pull-up point. So if we pull up anywhere here, aimed at the center, then if we pull up at 35 degrees, we should reach 10,000 feet at this point, and that should allow us to roll in and dive on the target at 35 degrees. It worked pretty well with the Harrier, so I think it's a good method. The problem we have with the A4 is that we really only get one waypoint that goes into the nav computer. Remember, waypoint 1 goes into the nav computer as D1. The position where you start from goes in as D2. We're not going to use D2, we're only going to use D1. So let me show you how I have planned the A4 mission to make that work. So I'm going to unhide my A4 here. So the first waypoint, I'm actually going to make the first waypoint, the one that'll be in the nav computer, is the initial point here. And then I'm going to fly from the initial point to the roll-in point. The trick is I have to know how far to fly before I pull up. So the nav computer will let me find the initial point, and if I know the bearing to fly away from the initial point, I just fly that bearing, and then I use the nav computer to tell me when I've reached the range where I want to pull up. So I've done those calculations, and let me just show you those. So first of all, there's the pull-up point. There's the line we have to fly, and it turns out that that line is at about 17 degrees and it's 4 nautical miles. I picked the initial point so that it's an even number of nautical miles from the pull-up point. Now, the other thing we do have to remember is that is 17 degrees true. In the cockpit, we will actually have magnetic bearings, which are about 7 degrees less. We have to add 7 degrees of declination on the Caucasus map. So we're going to want to fly at about 10 degrees magnetic for 4 nautical miles after we cross the IP. So we're going to come up to the IP. At the IP, we're going to turn to 10 degrees. We're going to fly 4 nautical miles. When the nav computer says we've hit 4 nautical miles, we're going to pull up at 35 degrees. And then when we get to 10,000 feet, if we look to the left, we should see the target. We should dive in at 35 degrees. So let's go out to the range and see if we can make that work. Okay, here we are rolling down the runway in our A4E. Just got to get off the runway, and then we got to do a couple of things to get ourselves set up. All right, gear up, flaps up, trim it out. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is set our HSI to be looking at the nav computer. So we need to flip the switch for that. All right, so that tells us, yeah, we want it on the nav computer, so that tells us how to find the initial point. And then I'm also going to turn on the radar altimeter, but I'm going to turn the warning down to about 300 feet, so it's not bugging me all the time. So we're going to go out here past the coast, and we're going to turn right, and we're going to follow the HSI needle to the initial point. And once we cross, we don't have to approach the initial point on any particular course, but obviously it'll be easier the closer we are to the bearing that we want to take to go to the actual roll-in point. So the closer we are to basically 10 degrees, the better. Okay, so we're going to start shaping the course around here, watching the HSI needle. We want to get it up to the top when our bearing is around 10 degrees. Rolling it out. Now we just need to watch the HSI, watch as the distance counts down. The needle will probably flip either left or right as we go over top of the IP as well. And again, we don't need to worry about the HSI needle anymore after we go over the initial point. All we have to do is turn to the right bearing, which is around 10 degrees, and then, but we do need to watch the HSI distance count up. There we go. We're crossing the IP now. So we want to get on 10 degrees. Not nearly as fine guidance as in the case of the Harrier, but we don't need to be perfect anyway. So now we're just watching the distance count up. And when it gets to 4 degrees, that's going to be our cue to pop up. Just trying to keep 10 degrees. Keep on 10 degrees. Watch the distance count up. And again, it's not a very fine scale. It's coming up. There we go. Let's pull up there. Now we're going to use the nav ball to get about 35 degrees. Try and stay on that course. Start looking for the target. Start watching our altitude. Not looking bad. We're certainly in about the right spot. And once we get to around 10K, should be around there. Let's roll in. Oh, let's remember to arm everything, unlike we did in the Harrier. Okay, find the target and roll out. It seems like it's a little bit of shallower dive than we probably wanted, but find the target, pickle, and hold. And we're off. Take a low egress here. See what the target information tracking script has to say. It wasn't all that happy with the roll-in. Of course, doing the mad fence-in at the top of the roll-in is not exactly the recommended procedure, but at least I didn't go off dry like I did with the Harrier. Okay. Okay, so we were a little shallow, 28 degrees. Not wildly enthusiastic about the accuracy numbers either. And that might be because I don't have the air-to-ground radar on. Haha. Okay, I think we can do better than that. So let's go around again, now that we're fenced in, now that we get the radar on. And let's make sure that we keep our bearing, definitely around 10 degrees, maybe a little under. We'd really rather be diving in on the target steeper than less steep. The whole idea is to spend as little time as possible up high. And again, with the A4, we're not expecting to be as accurate as we were with the Harrier. We just don't have that level of fidelity in the instruments. But I think you can see already that this is a system that works. In fact, it sounds like it's very similar to the system that pilots the F4 in the Yom Kippur War used, at least based on the description. That's the description I used for figuring out how to do this. And they would basically turn at the initial point, and then the navigator guy in the back would basically count down the range to the pull-up point and count it down for the pilot and basically tell him when to pull up, which is pretty much exactly what we're doing here. Just letting the nav computer take the place of the guy in the back. So again, we do need to fly over the initial points. We are going to have to follow that HSI needle to actually take us to the IP. We don't need to worry about the needle after we get to the IP. We need to worry about the bearing. We need to fly away from the IP at 10 degrees, and we need to fly for 4 nautical miles, and then we need to pull up. So we're coming up on the IP. Got to get around a little bit more here. All right, flying at the IP now. And then we just have to wait until that needle flips sideways on us, and then we're going to have to turn to 10 degrees and start watching our range. Just a little bit further here. So you can see we're coming at it from a different angle than we did the last time, which is fine. It will still work. Okay, there we go, passing the IP. So now we need to turn. The needle's going crazy, but we don't care. Got to get to 10 degrees, roll out, start watching our distance. Just keep watching that distance, wait for it to count up to 4. Try and keep our course as close as possible to that 10 degrees. Get too far outside that. 3, 2, 1, there's the pull up. Alright, pulling up, trying to get that 35 degrees, watching the nav ball. Gonna look to the left. Yeah, we're closer to the target this time, that's for sure. That's good. And we're fenced in. That's good. And pulling over. That's it. Like this roll in a little bit better. Just gotta get the pipper up to the target. Roll out under the target, pull the pipper up to it. There. And the bombs are gone, and off we go. Alright, well, let's see what the target impact tracking script had to say about that one. And while we're waiting for that, I just say before we go here, I think you can see that that actually is a method for doing a pop-up attack in the A4 that works. I think it uses the nav computer the way it was intended to be used. It's not as accurate as the Harrier, but it's not bad. Well, look at that. So we were a little bit more that time, 40 degrees, but we dropped it over 3,000 feet. And we did manage to come pretty close. We were a little bit left of the target, but we bracketed it. So there you have it, doing a pop-up attack in the A4. Give that a try. Let me know how you do. And for now, this is going to be Sidekick, signing off.